What's going on, everybody? JT here, C Will, and we've got a very special guest coming out of Algo Foundry, the CTO and co-founder Michael Knott. Algo Foundry, I don't know if you know, but under the umbrella, they've pumped out projects like Algorand, Algo Safe, and Messina One. A lot of people in the ecosystem know that Pepe, the meme coin, was gaining a lot of attraction over the last couple of months, and it began trading on Algorand with the help of Messina One's bridging technology. So super excited to have this conversation, and welcome to the show, Michael. How you doing?
Thank you. Yeah, good to be here. I'm doing great. How about you guys?
Awesome. We're doing fantastic. How about
Yeah,
you, Sewell?
I'm well over here. Excited to get the show on the road.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's start off with a high-level overview of what Algo Foundry is, and then we'll dive deeper into Messina One itself.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So Algo Foundry is a venture studio that's focusing on Algorand ecosystem. And so one of the things that we often find when we talk about what a venture studio is that it's lumped in with incubators and accelerators. And that is part of what we do. But a venture studio really is a lot more all-encompassing. So it starts at the ideation phase, and it goes through incubation, acceleration, and it also does growth at the end. So it has two phases that those don't have. And then also we focus on education and curriculum. So we have courses for Algorand out on our website as well as on Udemy. So pretty much we take an idea from the back of a napkin all the way through raising funds, creating an MVP, and then growing it as a project.
Now, what
Amazing.
kind of educational content are you talking about? Is this something that, people that have very little experience building in, the blockchain space in general could look at and gain a good understanding? Or is this more for people that have at least a little bit of an understanding of what's going on?
Right, right. So we have three courses. The most basic is called fundamentals, and that really does start at a level where you kind of might be a little bit of a developer already. So maybe you have some experience in JavaScript or something like this, but none in blockchain specifically. And we will walk you through what is a blockchain, why does it matter, how does it, what is the paradigm shift when it comes to building apps on blockchain versus Web 2. All the way through setting up an Algorand environment and development environment and sort of getting the basics together. And then the next course is a developer course where we go very heavily on, the stuff that's related to Algorand development. And then the final course is a specialist course where we talk about things that are very specific to Algorand, like security or designing around the constraints that Algorand has that maybe an EVM doesn't have, for example.
Nice. Have y'all had experience using Algo Kit so far with the new students?
We have got a part of the developer and specialist course which is very focused on Algo Kit. It's like 2 or 3 days. It's a full module on its own. So we've been tracking it right from the beginning when John Woods was just announced it on, I think it was in Token 2049 or one of the deciphers here in Singapore. And basically, we had early access to the GitHub, and so we've been involved in it right from the beginning. But it's just a one phase of our course because we try to be agnostic to the tooling. It is the best tooling right now. It incorporates Beaker, which I think is the best tooling. And yeah, I mean, basically, we don't try to ram things down people's throat like, you got to use this type of kit or whatever the case is. But yeah, it is in the course.
Right, right. So let's dive deep into Messina One. I know it's bridging technology. It's allowing interoperability between other ecosystems. Most famously, Pepe was bridged over into the Algorand ecosystem. But let's dive a little bit into that. What is Messina One at a high overview level, and then we'll dive deeper.
Well, I mean, at a high overview, I'd say the purpose behind Messina One is actually to try and drive mass adoption for crypto in general, to people that are not the early adopters of crypto. And sort of we believe that there's really only one way to do that, which is to sort of create a better user experience for using DeFi and crypto. And really the start of that is building infrastructure pieces. And so when we looked at all the infrastructure that was really missing to make that beautiful user experience and simplify, dumb it down for people, the thing that stood out the most for us was interoperability between chains first. And that's why we started Messina One as a bridge. We built the token bridge first. We're now moving on to building the other pieces. for that user experience.
Okay. Can you speak on, we know you're on Algorand, but what are some of the other platforms or blockchains that we're interconnected with?
Sure, sure. So you can think of Messina's bridging kind of like similar to Stargate is on top of Layer 0. So Layer 0 is a messaging protocol between blockchains. Wormhole is also a messaging protocol between blockchains. Now, Stargate is basically a liquidity pool, which is built on top of the messaging layer. So it allows you to map stables to stables, for example, or one token to an ASA, or whatever the case is. The same thing for Messina. It's built on top of wormhole messaging. But instead of using the traditional wormhole token bridge, which is called Portal, which does a mint and burnt sort of model, we have a liquidity model. So it allows you to, for example, have a liquidity pool of USDC on all the chains, and then just map those tokens to each other. And so because of that, we support every chain that Wormhole is on right out of the box, because we built on top of it. We also notice that there are, some newer chains, new L2s and other chains that are out there that Wormhole does not support for various reasons, political reasons mostly. Cronus is one of them. Some of the L2s like BNB, OPBNB, and a lot of the OP stacks that are coming out now are not supported by Wormhole. And so we also built a validation and guardian network in Messina, which is a fork of Wormhole, and support those other chains that Wormhole does not support.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. The future is looking more interoperable.
Yeah, absolutely. Now,
Right.
with that network that you spun up to be able to connect to those ecosystems that Wormhole does not, who are the validators of those networks or that network? Can anybody become a validator of that?
Well, okay, so typically, bridging itself or interoperability itself can only be achieved in one way. There's 1,000 ways to do that one way, but in essence, you've got something that watches blockchain A, sees something happen, and then communicates with blockchain B and tells it that it happens, right?
Right.
Now, some people do that with their own blockchain, like Router Protocol is its own blockchain. Some people do it by breaking it up between an oracle and a data transmitter. That's what Layer 0 does. Wormhole has a Guardian thing, which has 19 different sort of guardians within its own sort of Whisper or P2P network where they come to consensus. Cosmos does it through IBC. So everyone has a different sort of spin on how to do that thing. But in essence, it's all the same hamburger, right? So when we built the stuff for the other chains, what we typically do is we find that those chains are underserved by bridging. So what we do is we try to approach the foundation of the chain that's spinning up, and just say to them, look, we want to bring bridging, right? You don't have to pay us anything, right? All we ask is that you guys have to have validators, right? It's no way to have a blockchain without them.
Yep.
Whitelist some of our sort of guardians so that we can get access to the main validators and basically just read blocks off of them. And if you can do that, we will build a bridge for you for free. And that's basically been our approach.
That sounds amazing. Wow. Can you speak on some of the security? There was a lot of, bad things that was happening throughout the last few years with bridges, with hacks, and I don't like saying that word, but can you speak on security and what y'all do to make sure that this bridge Messina is effective? Yeah,
sure. So, I mean, Wormhole was hacked once, as you probably remember. It was Solana. So basically, what happened there was the actual part that was holding sort of some of the liquidity on Solana's side, the contracts got exploited, and because of that, a user was able to sort of claim that they had a bridged transaction that they didn't actually have. It wasn't in the actual bridging protocol itself. It was actually just in the Solana smart contracts. But it's still like an exploit, right? And basically, bridges are mostly attacked because of the fact that they hold a large amount of liquidity, and they also hold it in many different places. So it's very difficult to, sort of secure it in a way. So the first thing that we do is obviously we're on top of Wormhole. Those guys, since they got hacked, they take security very, very seriously. I mean, not that they didn't before, but like now it's plus, right?
Yeah.
So they're getting audited all the time. They obviously got their unified bounties and all these things, right? So that's the first layer. The second layer of it is basically we got into sort of as Algo Foundry, we got into a sort of a partnership with Kudelski Security at one point, prior to Kudelski basically shutting down their audit business. But during that partnership, we were co-developing a product that didn't see the light of day commercially, but we still have it, which is something that's very similar to what Open Zeppelin's doing on EVM called Defender. And what it does, it monitors blocks in real time. So it's kind of just watching the blockchain nodes. And it monitors very specific smart contracts that obviously are the bridge. And it looks for any anomalies, anything that's going on the bridging contracts. And it has sort of like a list of rules where it looks for expected, unexpected, invariant, and certain types of behaviors. And should it see something like that, then there are countermeasures built into the smart contracts themselves where we can rate limit the transactions, or set a limit on the maximum transaction amount, or blacklist a wallet or things like this. And we can do that in real time on the same block that we notice. So these are the things that we've built into bridging. That doesn't mean it's 100% secure, but it's the best that we can do with what we feel, like in our imagination and manifestation. It's the best we can do.
What could some of like other foundation or blockchains do to help the whole security issue? We know Algorand, I believe, made I know box storage is not all the way, but box storage, they have state proofs and things of that nature. Is there anything else out there?
Well, I mean, okay, so when it comes to security, there's basically two major principles that you really have to understand. The first is that security is counter to convenience. If you have a total secure system, it's completely inconvenient. If you have a completely convenient system, it's totally insecure. So you have to really pick the balance there very well, right? Most people don't like waiting, right? So everything's instant gratification these days, right? So it's like, oh, I want to bridge something. I don't want to have it there tomorrow. I want it there in 3 minutes is a long time. I want it there in 15 seconds. Click. Oh, it's not there yet. Where is it? Well, it's very hard to do security under those conditions, right? So that's the one balance. And the other thing about security is that you really just, like, if you're really being honest with yourself, you can't ever really secure anything. If anyone has like real desire to break something, they will break it. It's just the thing that you can do is distinguish between covert and overt operations. So the worst thing that can happen is someone breaks in or exploits you covertly so that you don't know it happened. And so they're in your system, and they're watching all the time. They can do whatever they want, and you don't even know it's happening in the background. That's the worst.
It's like my algo. That's what it's
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the security that we put in place is really about trying to eliminate covert action first. So if we know it happened, then there's sometimes there's nothing you can do about it, but sometimes there is things that you can do about it, right? So that's where our focus is. But in essence, this is just part of life. I think that I maybe have a different perspective on it because I grew up in Africa, so it was a very, very dangerous place, a lot of crime, a lot of violence, and it's like, and I never grew up with it in like a security bubble where I just took security for granted, right? You know what I mean? So I just think it's something people have to accept. It's part of the risk of being free, is that things can go wrong.
Definitely, things can go wrong. Well, that's why y'all here, to make it go right as best as we can.
We do our best, yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that the bridging part of Messina One was more step one in a larger goal for Messina One. Could you speak a little bit more onto the future plans for Messina One?
Yeah, for sure. So okay, so there's in order to achieve this mass adoption, right, to make a great user experience, we believe that it cannot be a situation where you have to know which chain an application is running on and how to connect to that chain. So the first part of solving that was interop, like the bridging infrastructure. The next part of it is like adding in the things that are related to obfuscating wallet technology, right? So everybody in crypto is like, oh, we're old school. We know what a wallet is. We know it's a private key. We know it's an EOA. We buy into this idea we've got to spend $100 on a USB device just to secure our keys, right? Like that's not going to fly if you want your grandmother to use crypto, right? It's just not going to work. So the next step of it is to sort of work on this wallet technology. So it's a very popular thing these days, right? Everybody's done it. It's not new, but there is this thing called MPC, multi-compute, and basically what it does is it creates a private key in a way that no one can see it, and it splits that private key up into a certain number of what they call shards. Each shard is placed in a different place, right? When you want to interact with a blockchain, then those shards are reconstructed into a private key and it's signed. So in essence, nobody has the private key. You have to be able to retrieve it from several different places in real time based on who you are. So now you're proving your identity by biometrics, by owning a device, owning an email, being able to reply to an SMS or something like this, right? Which are traditional Web 2 methods. So this is the next thing we're doing. We also believe in adding that to what's called account abstraction, which is also a big thing now in Ethereum, which means that your wallet is actually not ever on your edge devices. It's actually running on the blockchain. It's a smart contract, and the smart contract is the wallet, and then the EOA is the things like MetaMask or whatever. Those things just control the wallet. You're just proving that you have control by using MetaMask. So we're building those things into interoperability, which basically means that we get all the features of what they call gasless transactions. Not really gasless, but you can pay for the transaction with any token. So you don't need native tokens anymore. You can also have smart relayers so that actual applications themselves can pay for the gas. And then when you have all of that built in, what you end up with is, I don't want to use the word wallet now because it's much more than a wallet. It's a crypto experience. But essentially, you've got a lot of crypto in this application, and any application you want to, any dApp that you want to go to on any chain at any time for any reason, you just click and it works. Doesn't matter which chain it's on, doesn't matter which tokens you've got in your wallet, it just works.
So how does that work with, like, Algorand needs Algo. So how does that work if I was paying in a USDC on like Ethereum or something like that? Is there a swap in the background happening?
Yeah. So basically, this paymaster, right? So Algorand's a little bit different because only the applications, the dApps that are composable will work on Algorand. They're not forced to be composable, right? So because Algorand has got some constraints, what ends up happening is you like, for example, one of the constraints in the language is you cannot send ASAs as a parameter to a function call. So what ends up happening is when you design your protocols, you have to make what's called atomics. So you would send an ASA, then you would make an application call to a smart contract. The application call would check that the ASA was sent in the previous step, and so on and so forth. So you group all these things into a group of transactions. So one of the in their wisdom, the DevRel team, in the very first versions of Algorand education, they sort of came up with this best practices, which said that, hey, you should limit the size of the atomics. So for example, if you're building a web app and you know that when someone clicks on a button in your web app, you're going to send 5 transactions in this atomic, you should check that it's only 5 and not allow more than 5. That used to be a best practice. And because of that, if anyone followed that best practice, it's then impossible to add a 6th or 7th transaction, right? So then it makes it not composable. You have to call the app in exactly how the way it was designed. You can't add it as a Lego block. But the newer apps like Pack don't have that constraint. So some of the new apps will work. So basically how it works is Algorand has got this concept where any transaction within a group can pay the gas of the entire group. Not every transaction pays for itself. And so what would happen is you would sort of add this paymaster, is what they call it, on the top or the bottom, doesn't matter, of this composable group. and basically it would pay for the gas in Algo, and it would insert a transaction of swapping some token that you've already got, which is not Algo, into Algo through Pact or something like this, and to pay for the gas. And it does a similar thing on EVM and so on. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds amazing and a lot more seamless right there. Because sometimes, yeah, we get stuck trying to do things, and you're like, oh, I got to go get more algos to pay the gas. And I've noticed, I always talk about the Cosmos ecosystem, but they're doing similar things with their new blockchains, allowing for the Atom token or any token to be used for gas. And when you mentioned sharding, I used to be really into Algorand or Multiverse X, and they have similar technologies there. So very great insight.
Yeah, I mean that's basically it, right? So like the whole thing is, I always ask people like who made the most money in crypto so far? Like it's pretty obvious answer actually. It's the central exchanges, right?
Yep.
Binances of the world make the most money. Why did they make the most money? Because you have a Web2 login, everything looks and feels exactly the same within the app. So it's like you can do anything there, and it all looks and has the same user experience. It's tightly integrated. Chains don't matter, right?
No.
Right, and
That's
then
how,
you
that's how I used to trade, only on Coinbase, and that was it.
yeah. So it's quite clear that if you can do a sort of a experience where the chain doesn't matter, you can pay with anything, and it's a unified experience. It works. So all we got to do is do that in DeFi somehow, and the building blocks are kind of coming together to do that.
Now, when could we expect those sort of innovations to come out of Messina One?
Right. So I mean, basically, we're that's a good question. I mean, we are working hard at it. We have the MPC technology already built. We have AA already built on all the platforms that are not Algorand. We have Algo Safe, which is the start of our AA platform on Algorand, which is basically a smart contract wallet that's very similar to Gnosis Safe. So those things are coming along pretty well. We also get distracted sometimes. I call it get distracted, but we get inspired. That's a more positive spin on it. We get inspired around, we have this really nice dining room table. It was really hard to get into our office space, actually. And we sit around and we drink wine and we talk about the state of things. And we come up with these inspirations, and and then you look again, and you're like, we should have been working on that wallet thing. Yeah, right. But one of these inspirations that's coming up pretty soon is, we're trying to take on liquid governance actually, and coming up because we feel like it's a misnomer as it stands in Gialgo right now. Not to say bad things about folks. I know they got a new version of Gialgo coming out as well, but I don't.
Algo.
Yeah, well, XL goes okay. Now it's only on other chains, right? Yeah. And honestly, and okay, great. It's cool. I don't think it's good for Algorand, but that's fine. One man's opinion. But anyway, it's not really liquid, is it? I mean,
it's up for debate.
Yeah,
it's
say that.
It's kind of like ice blocks, right? I mean, it's frozen liquid. But yeah. So we're actually trying to build a really liquid governance token where you can sell it at any time, and you just hold it and you accumulate governance rewards, and you don't have to cycle it every governance cycle. You just hold it.
That sounds like, again, the Atom token, Stride, and they have different Stride, and I believe there was one more that does similar. It's like a liquid. You deposit, shoot your token out, and you don't have to ever return it if you don't want to.
Yeah. So one of these inspirations like this is kind of delayed us in pulling out some of the things on Messina, but they are definitely coming in the next I would say 2 to 3 months. You'll definitely see some stuff. We will be showing off some of the tech in Token 2049 in September timeframe. We've built some GUI stuff in different places. I don't want to release it all right now, but it's not just a web app. There's going to be some surprising things showing off the user experience, and yeah, you'll be able to see that in the middle of September.
Okay, can I jump back to something? Can we talk more about deep, transparent liquidity, and what exactly does that mean?
Right. Well, okay. So liquidity is it's mercenary, right? When it comes to DeFi, right? People put their funds in places where they can make the most return for the least amount of risk.
Yep.
And if another project comes up with another way to do it, boom, the liquidity is gone typically. So it's not very sticky. So typically what people are trying to do to solve that problem in the beginning of DeFi, let's call it DeFi 1.0, is they come up with all these staking and lockup methods. So like put your funds here, lock it up for 30 days, you get a higher return, lock it up for a year, you get an even better return, right? But people don't really like that. I mean, it's doing okay, I guess, but typically that's where your rugs and your scams come. So it's like it's very hard to sell that these days. So what invisible liquidity is it's kind of this idea that sort of you place liquidity in places that can be sort of utilized and not dead liquidity. And it's there's a bunch of people that are trying to do it in different ways. Um, Uniswap V3 is an example of this, I think, versus V2. So basically in V2, let's say you had 10 million, like Pact, for example, Tiny Man, right? He had $5 million on each side of a pair. You got $10 million of tokens in a pool, let's say. And let's say the volume of that pool was like 50,000 a day, or maybe in 100,000 a day, but you got 10 million there. You don't need $10 million to support that, right? And so if the actual liquidity was sized correctly, you would get much higher returns for the trading fees, and you'd also have like maybe $8 million to put in other places, right?
Mhm.
So the concept of like creating like this dark pools or invisible pools of liquidity is that that it can be placed in a place that is used on demand and spread out in other places, so it's not dead. I mean, from
Okay.
a high level.
Yep. Another question about, now I'm talking about integrations. So we'll see. I can see Messina more as a a platform to be integrated. So is there other like DeFi products or protocols that can like directly integrate Messina's bridge and all of its technology, so we don't have to like essentially go to Messina to do that? We can just use it directly on the platform.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sure. So we have an SDK with Messina, where you can do it. So there's three levels of integration with bridges. The first level is just what you know now, which is you approach the team, we list the tokens. It's curated at the moment for several reasons, but at the moment it is. It may not be. It may be permissionless at some point. But you go to Messina, you look at the list, the tokens listed. People go to Messina, they bridge it, and they use your bridge. So that's the easiest and simplest way to do it, and the least effective, in my view. The second way to do it is you build the Messina bridging interface directly into your application. So on your application, you'd have a tab or button or something that says bridge, and it would be its own little page, and it'll be a bridging page. And it just basically does the bridging the same as the Messina thing, but with your user interface, right?
Okay.
That's a lot easier to build. There's widgets we have already. You can download them, put them in JavaScript stuff, put it in your dApp, boom, it works. There'd probably be like, let's say, a week of effort or something or less with testing and stuff. Then there's the last level, which is what we always recommend people do, but you have to have a really good tech team and understand it well, where you get involved in the relayer level. So basically what happens is a transaction happens on chain A, what they call emits. So you see that it happens, and then you have this this code that runs off the blockchain in a centralized way, which verifies through the the security mechanisms that actually happened, and then you can basically customize this code to do very specific things for your application. So instead of moving a token across, it could call things in your application which do things that are not related to tokens. It could change state or update something, or call 7 smart contracts instead of 1 or something like this. You can customize that. And if you did it this way, then basically bridging becomes invisible. Like the end user doesn't even know the bridging is happening. And so we are doing that for some applications to showcase it. There is a, it's not Algorand though, unfortunately, but there is a a launchpad that we're working on that's going to be on several EVM chains pretty soon. And then also we are now working with Opulus to do the same thing with Opulus. So that will be coming out probably at sometime in the beginning of next year. But what will happen with Opulus is, if you connect to MetaMask, you're on ETH, let's say, or Polygon, wherever you are, you will interact with the app from a Polygon wallet, and it will look like you're interacting with a Polygon app. But what's really happening behind the scenes is you interacting with the Algorand smart contracts, but you don't even know it's happening.
That's the future of it.
Yeah, it's going to be quite amazing.
Yeah, this is actually really riveting stuff. I want to give a reminder to everybody watching to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, whether you're watching on Twitter, YouTube, whether you're watching live or the replay after. Hit us up in the comments. If you're watching live right now, hit us in the comments with questions you might have for our guest before he takes off today. But we do have one question from the guest, Mr. Joker, who's always tuning in. Thanks for tuning in.
Shout out to Joker.
He's asking about bridging NFTs, whether, sometime this year, sometime in the future. What's the future of bridging NFTs? Is that something that's, one, possible, and two, is it desired by the market? Is it something that you guys are thinking about?
Yeah. Okay, so we've already built bridging for NFTs. It is only currently live for a customer of ours, which is on Kronos and Polygon. It's a GameFi customer. So we're already doing it for them. We have got, obviously, because of those two chains, we have an EVM implementation of the NFT bridging. On top of the bridging, we also have what's called a EIP, which is like a suggestion to improve the Ethereum protocol, sort of like an ARC in Algorand, for changing the contracts for NFTs to have better bridging experiences, which basically would, right now with the old NFTs, they're not sort of aware of bridging, right? So what will happen is an NFT gets locked. So the original NFT is minted, let's say, on Polygon. It gets locked on Polygon, then a copy is really on Ethereum or whatever the other chain is, and then you can bring it back to get the original back. So if it's not the original, it's basically a copy, right? Which is not ideal. So the EIP that we have is actually allowing us to, if someone does implement that NFT standard, allows us to burn the original, so that when it goes over to the other chain, it is the only thing that's out there.
So in a sense, it can actually live from chain to chain with this burning feature in a real way. Oh, amazing. The game developers out there, pay attention if you hear this part.
Yeah. So we have that already out there. We have the NFT bridging for the EVM chains. We don't have an Algorand version at this time. Now, there are a couple of constraints around Algorand which are unfortunate, which is obviously, as you already know, NFTs are done. Yeah, well, they're done as one, a total supply of one on an ASA. So basically, it's like just making a regular ASA, but you're limiting the supply to one. So there's the concept of a collection doesn't really exist, right? So that's one constraint. And then because of that, you've got a lot of issues around opt-ins. So, basically you can't just move. Let's say you have 5 NFTs from the same person that's in a collection, which is not really technically true. You can't just opt into this collection and get any of the NFTs given to you. You have to opt into each one individually. So it adds a little bit of a wrinkle. But this is something we've talked to the Algorand Foundation about. We did ask them to help us with basically sponsoring developing this part out, and it looks like they're pretty interested in it. So, and bringing some of the GameFi people.
Yeah. So how is it possible? I know this is not for you, but is it possible to change Algorand's whole blockchain and say no opt-in? Because that is something that I see as an issue where, like, people on Twitter is like, oh, Algorand has fees is 0.001, right? We could do a million NFTs for $5, but then the argument says, well, what about the opt-in? So that's another fee there that most people don't want to talk about. So is this a possibility?
Yeah, look, I mean, the whole thing is that this is actually quite a tricky question, right? Because it goes past the technical. Technically, it can be done, yes. As something that John Woods is actually looking at, and I know that he's had conversations with Inc about it. But it goes past that. It goes into an economic and a political conversation on Algorand for the reason that the Algorand blockchain is not sort of formulated in a way that the node runners are actually compensated.
Yep.
They're compensated through private agreements, but they're not compensated by gas or transaction fees.
Yep.
So as a result of that, if you make changes like opt-in, it sounds like it's not that big of a deal. But let's imagine that you did this, and then some nefarious person wants to actually try and spam every Algorand wallet or something like this.
Yep.
The amount of storage you have to run a node might go up terabytes overnight, and then who's paying for that?
Yeah.
So like
it's no revenue model basically.
Yeah. So like in Ethereum, like the validators of the network, I do that by staking Ethereum, right? And so the gas fees are high. Yeah, it's $80 sometimes for gas, right? But that $80 is going directly to the people running the nodes.
Yep.
And so like, they can add features because you have to pay for it.
Yeah, so that's a pickle there.
Yeah, it seems like adding a revenue model for the node runners could help solve that issue. And I wonder, this is more just like a high level conversation here, but I wonder actually if they could implement like an optional opt-in feature where, maybe I want most of my wallets that, you have the traditional opt-in feature because I don't want people spamming it, but maybe I have one wallet that, you can send anything to because I'll just allow that. I wonder if that would, one, be possible, and two, reduce that issue.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a thousand creative ways to do this. I wouldn't say that I've spent many hours thinking about it. I do know it's an issue. I think that probably the solution is more going to be along the lines of either just opening it up to anyone and F the node runners. That's more than likely. But let's imagine you want to get creative. Then maybe there would be an idea of like validating or like blue check mark. And now this is another political statement nowadays, but like the blue check mark in Twitter used to be, right, where you would say, USDC, that's clearly something everyone agrees is a good thing, right? So if you want to move USDC, you can do it to any wallet without opt-in, right? And maybe the NFT creators could apply for that and make sure they're not spammers and they have history and they have a good project and this kind of thing. And then all the ASAs get onto this list and then you don't need opt-ins or something like this. Might be a more pragmatic approach, maybe.
Yeah. Something to think about, y'all.
Yeah, I mean, that's true though. I don't think anyone would mind if you just spammed a bunch of wallets with USDC. I think we'd all be pretty okay with that.
Yeah. I definitely wouldn't complain. I give you my wallet right now. So
you got anything?
Yeah, I do. Layer 0. Can we talk about layer 0 again? And can you what is layer 0? Is that a different blockchain? Is it a software as a service? What exactly is layer 0?
Okay, well, I mean, basically, layer 0 is a messaging protocol. There's four major messaging protocols that talk between blockchains. Wormhole is in my opinion, the biggest. Some people would argue that it depends on how you measure it, I guess. Layer 0 is definitely the next biggest on the scene, and then there's a couple that are really up and coming, like Axelar, Router Protocol, and Hyphen. So basically, like I said, there's 1,000 ways you can do this, right? So you see something on blockchain A, you want to tell that thing happen on blockchain B. How do you accomplish that? How do you agree that it's happened? So on and so forth, right? So what layer 0 does is they have a novel approach. They have a on-chain oracle and they have a data feeder to the oracle. So basically they've split it up into two different pieces, whereas Wormhole just does like one call. Layer 0 has basically two. The smart contract on B talks to the oracle that's also on chain, but that's fed by an external thing, right? So yeah, I mean,
that makes sense.
Advantage I mean, the advantage of it is that they're going to say it's more secure. I don't think they've been exploited, so
that's good.
Maybe it is more secure. I don't know, but I mean, it is more complicated. That's number one. The other reason we don't like layer 0 versus Wormhole, or we prefer Wormhole, maybe is a better way of saying it, is that Wormhole is what's called multi-cost. So chain A, something happens, and then it doesn't tell you it has to only go to chain B. Let's say you're operating on 10 chains, that one message from chain A could go to all 10 chains. Whereas layer 0 is targeted, it's laser pointed. So you would have to create 10 transactions on chain A to go to each one of the other chains with layer 0, which is slower and more costly. So we like Wormhole for these reasons. Yeah.
Okay.
One of the reasons. Yeah.
I have another question on interoperability. So I don't know, a few months ago, Bitcoin got NFTs, and that was really popular. Is there a possibility that Messina could bridge to Bitcoin?
Well, to Bitcoin directly, probably not yet. There are some people operating pretty interesting things on top of Bitcoin, like CoreDAO is one of them. CoreDAO actually has an EVM layer on top of Bitcoin. So we could definitely go there. And then because you've got the EVM layer to Bitcoin, you can natively go into Bitcoin from that EVM layer. So we could probably go there if we wanted to. Yeah. The Bitcoin itself, I know that they've done quite a lot, but it's not Turing complete. And so I think there are certain things that would be required for checking signatures that we can't currently do on Bitcoin's current compute layer.
Interesting. Okay. JT, you got something?
Yeah, I want to move the conversation to Pepe a little bit because, of course, it's something that caught the Algorand ecosystem by storm. More broadly than just the Algorand ecosystem, of course. But I believe we recently passed, the amount of Pepe transactions on Ethereum on Algorand. So now there's more Pepe transactions happening on Algorand than where the coin was originally born. So I find this really interesting. And what inspired you guys to bridge over Pepe, and what other tokens are you looking at to bring over?
Well, you remember how I was talking about that wine session? No, I'm just joking. That's not how this one happened, actually. No, I mean, basically, we were thinking about there's several things that happened with the Pepe thing, right? So the first thing is that we were internally talking about, what is the next step? We already got the bridging, right? And what's the next step? And I always thought it was sort of this wallet thing that we're on the path now, but there was some conjecture that maybe that's not the best next step. And so we were sort of playing with lots of different ideas. One of the ideas originally was what they call cross-chain DEX aggregation. So kind of like a DeFi or DFlex, but on all chains. So basically it would route you through chains and DEXs to get to wherever you need to be.
Wow.
And so we were talking about that, and there are a few protocols like that right now. That one of them is pretty popular. It's called Rango. But if you ever use it, it's such a nightmare, man. It's like you're like, okay, I'm on ETH. I want to get to Polygon, and I'm starting with ETH, and I want to get to, let's say, Matic, right? And it will be like, okay, the best route you can actually do is go through Arbitrum, and then Arbitrum so it calculates it out, and we're gonna do on this DEX, and only 40% here, and so on and so forth, right? And it's beautiful. It saves you, let's say, $15. Amazing. I say $15. All right, go. And then basically, it starts doing these things, and every step it pops up this thing, and then you got to sign the transaction. Like to move $100 to Matic, I had to sign 86 transactions, and it took like 2 hours. You know what I mean? Like that's not what I wanted to do with my Saturday night. So we're talking about this. Like, can we make this better? And one of the things that we were contemplating was actually not going that far, but rather just using the advantages of a blockchain for what they actually provide. So one of the cool things about Algorand is that it's cheap and it's fast, right? It's amazing. That tech is amazing, right? So could we do that? And it just so happens that maybe I shouldn't out them, but some people in the community were really into Pepe at the time, and they were talking to us, the Messina team, about trying to bridge Pepe. And
was it John from Non-Fungible Domains?
It was he was one of the culprits. Yeah, because I mean he had a lot of.
I'll out him. It's fine. You didn't say it.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So we were talking on Telegram, and I remember it was a Thursday, and the Messina team came up to me and said, "Hey, do you think it's a good idea?" And I'm like, Yeah, let's go. Because I mean, this, and I'll tell you, I'll get to the reason why. And so basically, we threw it together. We really threw it together. We were like, okay, this is the first time we've tried doing this in like no preparation. There's no like meetings with a team or anything like that. It's just like, okay, what do we need to do? These 5 things. And yeah, we got it done, as you know. And so really the thesis there was, if you take USDC, let's say you have it on Ethereum, and you want to buy Pepe, at that time, on that Thursday, it costs $86, or between $70 and $86 for the gas fee just to swap it on Uniswap, right? And instead, if you took that USDC, bridged it through Messina, took the USDC, bought Pepe ASA on Pact, and then basically bridged the Pepe back into Ethereum, it costs you $4.46, and you achieve
That's
exactly
big
the
thinking
same.
right there.
Right. And we're like, okay, well, this is proving our thesis, right? So what if we built a tool that we market to Ethereum guys, right? And whichever chain, but mostly Ethereum because of the gas. And the tool is you swapping Ethereum tokens for Ethereum tokens, but we're going to bridge it through Algorand and swap it back every time. And you basically save $70 on gas. Like, what if we did that? Would that be something to do? And then we started talking to Pact about it, and like, as it turns out, it's actually quite hard to get the liquidity for all the different tokens that people would want to use, right? And then we sort of abandoned the idea. But Pepe was like one of the the inspiration off ramps. Yeah.
Well, it was smart because the community at that time was hyped, going crazy, and then it's kind of gone right now, but we never know. We do know that Messina now has that ability. If something else pops off, we know where to go do it at. So that's cool.
Yeah, and so what I tell people is, like, if there are other tokens that are super hyped that you think would be amazing for the community, we're happy to do it. The only requirement really would be that whoever approaches us for that has to have liquidity in that token. Like, we're not going to go and buy some of that crazy whatever Bold or Pepe 2 or whatever the latest thing is, Barbie token, whatever it is now. We're not going to do that just to make the stream happen. But if you want to come with your liquidity, we can facilitate it. Sure.
You hear that, Barbie liquidity providers? You gotta come on over if you want.
Amazing.
Straight up.
Yeah, well, this has been a fantastic conversation. I know we're going to actually have you back on in maybe a month or two. We'll dive a little deeper into some of the other products like Algo Rides, a decentralized options vault, Algo Safe, which we mentioned today. I think there's also an Oracle service that's on the website that is coming soon. So we'll definitely talk about that. But is there anything you want to mention to our audience before we take off here today? I'll leave the floor to you.
Well, okay. So for me, actually, the thing that I want to just touch on is, Algorand at this time has got a lot of folks that are really, really passionate about blockchain, about decentralization, about freedom, and I would just encourage people out there to go use the tools, educate yourself if you need to, dream big, build something, and sort of get involved, and try not to be on the sidelines as much. That's basically it.
Yep. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. I think that's a great positive way to end this show. If you want to learn more about Algo Foundry, there's a link in the video description down below. Definitely check that out, and check out the video description as well for links to our sponsors. Special thanks to Non-Fungible Domains and XM Market. And to everyone that watched to the end of this video, be sure to subscribe, be sure to follow us on Twitter, and hopefully we'll catch you in the next episode.
Peace,
Thanks,
y'all.
guys.